tell me how, first of all, how you came to meet Pacino for the first time.
Well, the very first time I met him, I was doing a play. I was doing an off-Broadway play, I think, what the heck was it? I was going out with a girl who was playing Vanessa Redgrave's daughter in Lady of the Sea, the Ibsen play, rarely done Ibsen play. And at the time, there was this rumor floating around that there was a workshop that Pacino was doing of the local stigmatic. I think it was about the third time that he'd done it, and it was not publicized, but it was happening at 11 or 12 midnight at the Public Theater. This is a play you probably know about because it's coming out on the box set. It's
right, absolutely.
50 minutes long, and he was very, very interested in this play for years. He was doing it with John Casale at the time at close to midnight down at the Public Theater, and I went with Vanessa Redgrave, of all people, as my date. We were all hanging out together because I was going out with this gal, Alison Argo, who played her daughter, and I said, hey, I've heard about this, and she said, I want to go to that, and I said, me too. I said, well, let's go together, and so I met Al Pacino for the very first time going backstage. We said, we've got to go backstage, and Vanessa's very down-to-earth and accessible, and just, that's the kind of thing she would do, so let's go see this workshop together. Mm-hmm. And we went backstage and gave Al a hug and thanked him for his amazing work in that. And I later saw rehearsals of this and then saw, of course, the film, which you've probably seen. Have you seen it?
Yes, I just picked it up. I was so relieved because I've heard about it for so many years, and as a big fan, I just couldn't wait to get my hands on it.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary, and it hasn't been released until now, as you know. But
right.
Anyway, a few years later, I found myself cast opposite him in Cruising, and went to meet him for the second time backstage at Richard III, which he was doing on Broadway. Little did I know I'd be looking for Richard, a few years later.
Right.
And I was quite sure he would want to rehearse. We were playing alter egos in this film, Cruising. As you know, he was the cop and I was the killer. And the way it was originally written, and which really intrigued all of us, you kind of knew who the killer was from the beginning, and you knew the cop and the killer, and you watched them come together. At some point, a decision was made to make it more of a murder mystery, and a lot of the stuff where you see the killer at the beginning, hit the cutting room floor. Actually, they were looking for it.
Yeah, I
wildly lately because they were coming out with the DVD and they couldn't find it. Something happened when it was, I guess, went from Lorimar to Warner Brothers or whatever, and they were not preserving films so carefully in those days, and nobody could find it. But
right.
There were all sorts of footage of me and Al. That scene on the park bench went on much, much longer. It was almost like a little Pinter play in and of itself. I mean, we talked about black holes and outer space and all sorts of stuff. It was probably 3 times the length that's in the movie. And there were other scenes of me with William Russ at the beginning talking about my parents and my favorite films being The Third Man and Strangers on the Train and all sorts of things that kind of gave you a little bit of a hint of his inner psyche. But none of that, no one knows where that stuff is now. But anyway, I was sure that Al would want to work on the material, to rehearse the big confrontation scene, and to my amazement, he wanted to hang out, but he didn't want to rehearse. And it was interesting. We were bound together in this movie in a way, but we were nemeses of each other, but there was a deep connection in a way, and
right.
He wanted to, also probably knowing that I was a young actor, wanted to just get close and get me to be as relaxed with working with him as possible. So we hung out a lot, and there were scenes that we weren't necessarily in, or that we were in the same space, but we didn't have dialogue together like in the clubs, the some of the leather clubs, and we would walk home together from this kind of disorienting experience. Neither of us had ever been in a situation like that, and Friedkin was really wanted to simulate very little. He wanted to actually go, to be happening in these bars, and so it was quite a summer of wow. What did we just live through here? And as you know, there were protests. There was some rioting in the streets of Greenwich Village. There were gay groups that didn't want the movie to be made, and gay groups that thought it was an important movie to be made, a cautionary tale. And there was a lot of security issues, and we would leave these shoots and walk all the way uptown together and just talk and decompress. And we got very, very close, and we didn't rehearse that scene, at all, but we were quite ready to shoot it when we got there. Mm-hmm. And he was tremendously generous, very, very supportive. I mean, when you're working with Al, it's about the artistry, it's about the process. He loves the work, and he wants to bring out the best in anybody he's working with. I'll never forget, there was a night during that scene when we end up in the tunnel,
Yes.
Where he was released because of a turnaround, and he said, I'll be damned if I'm not going to be there for your close-up. So he was off camera, staying on his own time. Mm. It was cold. It was, 4 a.m. There were mosquitoes, and he was just there to be off camera for me.
That's very rare, and I've heard from other actors that he does that. He does that for them too, and that's.
He even, this blew my mind. He's off camera, and there's a weird moment where we're sort of, you don't know whether they're going to, kill each other or fuck or what's going to happen.
Right.
He has his pants off at one point with his leather jacket on, and he said to me, "It's a weird image. I'm just going to take the pants off for you." So he was standing there in his boxers with his leather jacket on. He's off camera. He doesn't have to do any of this, but it's a weird, image that he thought might, do something, to me, and it was for me being on camera, and he was released. I will never forget that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy he is.
Yeah, we're very excited. You mentioned Richard III earlier. We have Thomas Waits, who was in that production of Richard III this Sunday night.
Oh, wow.
Speaking of some of that stage experience of Pacino's. But you also worked, I want to get into looking for Richard in Salamaybe.
He called me up and said, "Richard, would you meet me at this cafe down in the village?" Because we stayed in touch after cruising. It was like climbing a mountain.
Right.
Together to go through that. And we'd read plays together sometimes. He loves to sit around and read plays, and he had this theater loft, he called it, on Broadway and around 20th Street, and we would read various things there. And one day he called up and he said, I want to talk to you about a project. Meet me at this cafe. I said, sure. And lo and behold, there was a cameraman there. This is Richard Cox. And he filmed some of our conversation down there. I think there was one other person there, but that was the beginning of this amazing odyssey that took years and years and years. And years later, after we did a lot of the principal photography, he called him and said, we've got Spacey's coming over, and Aidan Quinn, is coming over from London or something. We're going to get to shoot the Battle of Bosworth out in Simi Valley. It took a long time, but it was an adventure, as is Salamaybe. And in both cases, if you're really interested in Pacino's process, these are chronicles of his creative process, those films. It's quite extraordinary.
This new box set is probably, for a big Pacino fan like myself, it's probably the most revealing insight into who he is as an artist that we've ever had.
Right.
These films. How is Pacino as a director? I know he said that he doesn't necessarily consider himself a director, but how is his process as a director?
Well, he leaves you alone a lot, and he wants to see what you bring to it, and then he may say a few things that are stimulating and try this or that, but he's very interested in your instincts and very, very supportive.
Mm-hmm.
He loves to rehearse. We rehearsed something in Salamaybe. He got an idea that he wanted to explore scenes suggested by David Hare's play Judas Kiss, about the hours before Oscar Wilde was arrested. And
right.
I don't know how much of it will make it into the film, but we shot about 14 pages of it. We rehearsed it for a week. He would rehearse, by the way. After cruising, he did American Buffalo for years, on and off, in different places all over the world. He, as you know, he loves the theater. He does workshops of things. I mean, I remember going to watch workshops of Brecht's Jungle of Cities and Arturo Ui. I think he worked on Arturo Ui for 6 months and just did one public performance of it.
I know just a couple of years ago he did a performance of it.
He did another production of Arturo Ui, right, that Simon McBurney directed. But he did back, 20, 25 years ago, he explored Arturo Ui at the Public Theater for 6 months, I believe it was, with actors. Just working in the way that, you may know something about Andre Gregory and how he would work for a year at a time, like on Alice in Wonderland. And on, he went, when he was doing American Buffalo, I visited him in London when he was working on that, and I saw it many times in New York and at Long Wharf and other places. They would rehearse even after they'd worked on this play, after it had been in performance for a year or two. They would get together at 6 o'clock at night, and they would have a cup of coffee together. Sometimes they'd just talk about the day, but other times they'd say, at the end of Act 1, I'm sure I once knew why I left, but like, I want to just think about that again. And they'd talk and they'd stimulate each other. And I remember J.J. Johnson, running out of this rehearsal saying, God, I found something. I just found something new. This is after they've been performing for a year and a half.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I was so moved by this. I would go down and just sit in the back and watch what they would do. Some nights, as I said, it was just a cup of coffee just to make contact with each other. But other nights it would evolve into real rehearsals. And I was about to work with Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronin on Foxfire, and I asked them if we could get together ahead of time. And Hume looked at me like I was nuts. I said, Laddie, he said, we're old folks. We have our own rituals, and we take a nap and this and that. But if you have the chutzpah to ask us to come in early, he said, what the hell? Maybe one night a week we'll do that. And I always felt that the performance was somehow richer that night that we'd come early.
Right. Well, these endless rehearsals and these endless not endless, but these multiple takes that he requests, they really pay off because in every Pacino performance, it is filled with such surprising moments.
Absolutely, and
that I know he found in that process. He
loves to mix it up and to try different things. And I remember hearing a story about Frankie and Johnny or Michelle Pfeiffer, who, like Olivier and certain other actors, comes, apparently with an orchestrated performance to the set. And they may be very talented, but they come with an idea of exactly the
set in stone
moments they want to. And Al would try different things on each take, and somebody said that Michelle Pfeiffer would turn to the director and say, "Look what he's doing! Can he do that?" I mean, the director said, Gary Marshall said, "Well, yeah, he's doing it. Just go with it." And I don't know. I didn't see these takes, but a friend of mine was working on post-production on Heat and said that it was very interesting to see the outtakes that De Niro would, according to this person, improvise a lot, maybe in rehearsal, but once it got to performance, he would be fairly precise because he wanted to make sure that certain things got on camera.
Yeah.
Whereas Pacino would be very different from take to take, and he'd sing one take, in some odd way in the middle of, and then another way he'd be down, and then he'd be up, and another take, and he likes to try it a lot of different ways.
Oh, what I wouldn't give to see those outtakes.
Yeah.
We have 5 actors from Salamaybe actually on Sunday. What can you? Is it structured like Looking for Richard? What can you tell us about it?
A little, yeah. It's it springs from the play, from his interest in the play which he saw in London. Who was that great actor that did it in London? Berghoff.
Stephen Berghoff.
Stephen Berghoff did a version that he saw in London that turned him onto the play, I believe, and he then kept reading it and working on it himself. He did it with Marissa Tomei, as I think you probably know, in New York, and
Cheryl Lee. And
yes, right. And he wanted to do it out here, and he wanted to see if it could evolve into a film. And I think in the process of working on it, it became an adventure like Looking for Richard is, about his passion for Shakespeare and his trying to figure out a way to do it. It's a bit like that in that you see them working on the stage performance. You see some of the stage performance. You see them trying to figure out a way to do it as film, and then some of it on film. But it's really about the effort. It's about the process to see what can I do with this extraordinary material. How can I make this accessible to people? And it's a wonderful, wonderful adventure. He goes, as he did with Looking for Richard, he went to where they were building the Globe Theater there and whatnot. I mean, he goes to the room that Oscar Wilde died in, and he ruminates about Wilde's life and what he was all about, and it's his love of Oscar Wilde as well as the play.
Right.
And it's the love of creative process,
Personally, I can't wait for it. I personally think that Looking for Richard, I've told you in email, I think it's one of the most stunning movies in his resume. Wow. So I can't wait for Salamaybe. But from an actor's point of view, is there a delineation between when you're performing Shakespeare on the stage and when you're bringing it to screen for a scene in the film?
Well, you mean in terms of the size?
And in terms of how it is played.
Well, it's interesting. I had dinner once with Pacino and Vanessa Redgrave, and she was talking about the Rose Theater, I think it was, the Swan, and the Rose were the theaters prior to the Old Globe. They were much, much smaller, and they were very intimate, and you could all this declamatory, large, Shakespearean came in later, pretty much in the 19th century, in the bigger houses, and of course the Globe was a lot bigger than the Swan and the Rose, but you can. It's wonderful when you can be very intimate with this on film, and as you remember, Looking for Richard, he at one point he's almost whispering to himself, "A horse, my kingdom for a horse," bellowing. So that's what's wonderful about the intimacy of film. I think Shakespeare lends itself beautifully to film for that reason.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate having you on, and you just have a fantastic resume. And it's been an honor to speak with you. What's coming up next for you, other than Salamaybe?
Got a few irons in the fire. I mean, I went to New York to do an interesting film that Emily Hubley directed called The Toe Tactic, and you never know how much of what you did, ends up in the film. I did a very funny scene in Henry Jaglam's Hollywood Dreams that did not end up in the film that he was lamenting about the other day. I just couldn't find a way to, tonally to use it, but I'm dying to see that footage. I've got a few things floating around and a few people that had wanted me to do things like, Milch had talked to me about Deadwood, but then that was canceled.
Right.
And you want to work with great people like Milch and Pacino, and that's what the joy is. And I had a good time in this thing I just did in New York. But give me a holler sometime if you want to talk about anything else, and by then I'll probably be working on something else.
We'll definitely do that.
We'll do that. Thank you so much.
I can't
appreciate it, Talia. It's always a great pleasure to talk about him and his process because it's exhilarating working with him, and I wish we could see all the things that he didn't quite get to do, like Hickey, and Modigliani, and some of
That's right.
Oh, there's a laundry list of things. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
fascinating stuff.
But keep your eyes peeled for the box set. It's going to be great.